As a general rule, unless religions come up against one another, we expect religious people to be peaceable and tranquil creatures, perhaps a little obsessed with their imaginary friend, but by and large law-abiding and respectful. But in today's case, a religious family is ripped apart by appalling violence that ends up originating closer to home than anyone could have imagined. We're going to 2019 and to North Carolina for the desperately sad case of the Borlase family. This is Murder of Crows. Deep Gap, in the context we are looking at today, is not a warning at tube stations, or indeed a description of the many potholes that seem to be breeding on roads the world over. In our case, it is an unincorporated community in North Carolina. Deep Gap is located in Watauga County, North Carolina. The community is named, you will be ever so surprised to learn. It's named after the natural gap called Deep Gap at Fire Scale Mountain, where the Blue Ridge Parkway crosses over US 421. Influential guitar player Doc Watson was born in Deep Gap and lived there until his death on May the 29th, 2012. The only other history of note from the area is that the Gap Creek Baptist Church was founded here in 1887. Given the sprawling nature of the area, estimates of the population vary quite widely, from the low hundreds to around 3,000. But the average estimate hovers around 2,000. So, a small community by most metrics. This kind of rural setting rarely sees crime, especially violent crime. But this small community was shaken by a tragedy in 2019, and it was very much a man-made tragedy. On April the 10th, 2019, emergency services received a call from a young woman who reported a large amount of blood in her home and 3 missing family members, her parents and younger brother. She added that she couldn't reach them. Police responded to the call and immediately drove to Deep Gap, about a mile from the Watauga-Wilkes County line. When patrol officers arrived at the home, they found blood on the walkway leading to the house, on the doormat by the front door, and a bloody trail inside the home leading up the stairs. That can't be good. Officers searching the outside area discovered the body of a man covered with leaves beneath a hammock, with multiple stab wounds. A little later, at around 10:30 p.m., the family's pickup truck was found hidden in the woods, with the body of a woman covered with a blanket and bags of mulch on top. Something grisly and violent had befallen these people. Geoffrey Borlase was born on April 16, 1975, and was a pastor of a conservative Protestant religious movement with Mennonite roots. As a boy, he was raised in an environment that emphasized personal piety and instilled a constant feeling of being watched by the strict and vigilant eye of God. Talk about Big Brother. A serious and thorough study of the Bible, combined with moral instruction, formed the foundation of his upbringing. Any entertainment, even laughter and colourful clothing, was frowned upon. Good deeds, charity work, missionary work, love for one's enemies, and rejection of all forms of violence were considered virtuous. Put simply, bad behaviour in all its forms was considered sinful. And Geoffrey absorbed all of these principles as the son of Pastor Harry Borlase. Geoffrey grew up to be a kind, loving, gentle and patient boy. He took the principles of his religion and wove them into a way of life. As a young man, Geoffrey took a summer job at Big Surf, a water park located on the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. Serendipitously, on his very first day at work, the young man met a charming, modest girl. Her name was Tanya May Trandom. She was the same age as Geoffrey, held the same beliefs, and had almost an identical upbringing. Tanya, like Geoffrey, grew up in a family where Christian values were paramount. They were definitely peas in something of a pious pod. Get that alliteration in there. A patient, humble, selfless girl. She saw in the devout young man a perfect future husband, and maybe even devoted father. She gave Geoffrey a photograph of an elderly couple holding hands and said, "Someday this will be us." Wholesome words befitting an innocent and wholesome couple. The young lovers duly got married, and their family became a continuation of the ideals in which they had been raised themselves. The photo Tanya had given was carefully kept in the family album. Before long, the young couple welcomed their first child, a beautiful little girl named Taylor. Then, one by one, 3 more children appeared. It was clear that by shunning many forms of entertainment, the Borlase couple evidently found other ways to have fun. The youngest child was a son who the parents named Tristan, and Taylor became a full-on older sister to her brothers and sisters. She took care of everyone, helped everyone, supported everyone, but she was especially close to her baby brother. In many ways, she almost became another maternal figure for the young boy. For Tristan, Taylor became his best and indeed only friend, and despite the age difference, they were always together. They loved sport, loved music, and got into mischief together, obviously minor mischief because God wouldn't appreciate it otherwise. And as the 4 children grew older, Geoffrey and Tanya decided to fulfill their Christian duty and adopt 4 more boys from an orphanage. As you do, but fair play to them. Open, loving and friendly, the family grew even larger when it had 8 children, evidently. Taylor, twins Kaya and Alexis, Misery, Al, Stephen, Meliku, and Tristan. According to the family's religious beliefs, children were forbidden to use mobile phones and social networks until a certain age. Boys were not allowed to date girls until they finished high school, which meant until they were 18. Studying the Bible and other religious matters was mandatory. But in all other respects, the children grew up like any other boys and girls. The parents made no distinction between biological and adopted children. All of them received equal attention, care, and affection. The loving mother created a harmonious atmosphere and carefully maintained internal order. But if you thought I was going to tell you that it was the child named Misery that was the source of trouble later, you'd be wrong. The spouses believed that virtue should be nurtured through their own actions and taught their children by their own example. When a hurricane hit Haiti, Tanya sold her expensive wedding ring and donated the money to a housing fund for victims. In 2015, Taylor graduated from high school and moved to Boone to enroll at Appalachian State University. Now, this shift deeply affected Tristan, who felt that he'd lost his closest friend and confidant. While Taylor returned home whenever she could, given that she was not now residing under the same roof permanently, the rules that bound the Borlase children had loosened for Taylor, while Tristan remained with the old rules and routines, which compounded the resentment he felt about what he considered old-fashioned values. He rebelled against the restrictions imposed on him since childhood, and disagreed with his parents' religious views. He bemoaned the lack of a mobile phone and the inability to communicate with peers on social media, especially since such communication had become an integral part of modern teenagers' lives, as we well know. After Taylor's departure, arguments with his parents only increased. But in 2017, changes occurred in the family's life that they hoped would represent a new chapter. Jeffrey, Tanya, and the children moved into a new house with a large plot in Deep Gap, Watauga County, North Carolina. The house was located on a dirt road leading into a wooded area and was much more spacious than their previous home. In addition, the new residence was only 2 miles from the home of Robin, Tanya's mother and the children's grandmother. And of course, this closeness made it possible to turn to her at any time if help was needed to look after the younger children. But changing schools is always a trying and stressful time for kids. So while the locale may have been picturesque and tranquil, the move was not without its trials and tribulations for the Borlase children. In Watauga, Tristan attended the local high school and began participating in track and field, giving his parents hope that maybe he was turning his life around. And at first glance, it might have seemed that the Borlase family never had any problems or troubles. But this was not the case. Over time, Tristan's behaviour became alarming. In 2018, the school insisted on several consultations with a psychologist due to anger issues and lack of impulse control. By 2019, when the young man was attending high school, despite his remarkable abilities, he began having trouble understanding certain school subjects. And these difficulties worsened every day. From being a diligent student who had always been involved in school life before the move, he became an indifferent and withdrawn teacher who lost interest in studying. Tristan began arriving late to classes and generally did not want to study. It got to the point where he wore headphones during lessons and just sat with a vacant expression. I know some kids like that, actually. Some teachers tried to help Tristan, and he even responded at times, but everything always ended in the same indifference and lack of interest. On top of all of this, the young man did not always behave appropriately at home. By this time, he already had everything he had constantly argued with his parents about: his own phone, as well as access to social media. He spent a lot of time online, and on his Instagram profile, he called himself a musician. All in all, the apathy and pipe dreams that you would see with many young people. But the surface indifference hid a simmering anger and resentment. Taylor kept a close eye on the lives of her brothers and sisters, and noticed that Tristan was arguing more often with their parents and getting into religious disputes with their mother. She also learned about his difficulties at school. She tried to talk to Tristan, but the closeness they once shared was no longer there. After some time, Tristan began a relationship with Evelyn Faith Jackson, a girl from within their religious community. But despite this, they dated rather freely, not strictly following the household rules. They sometimes experimented with things that were forbidden in the family. And Tristan complained that his mother often talked to him late at night about his behaviour, which left him exhausted and unable to focus at school. Now, to me, that sounds like someone looking to blame other people for how they feel, so they can avoid taking responsibility. But I digress. He worried deeply about not living up to his mother's expectations, and believed that she could not be proud of him. He felt he could be himself around his father, but that things were different with his mother. But then came April the 10th, 2019. In the family's shed, which was used to keep goats, surveillance cameras had been installed. Gotta watch them goats. And Tristan's old phone, the one he sometimes used secretly, functioned as a Wi-Fi hotspot. That day, Tanya picked up the device for some reason and found messages in which her son discussed topics that went against the family's values, and she was shocked and outraged. While at school, Tristan noticed the phone receiving a sudden stream of notifications and realised his parents might have seen everything when his old phone sparked back to life. Shocked by what they discovered, his parents wrote to him in the family chat. That same day, Sherry King, Tristan's English teacher, called his mother to report concerns about his grades and about his recent school behaviour. Later, she would testify that Tanya had called her back, saying that she and her husband would come to pick Tristan up early to discuss what was going on. Much later, Tristan himself would say that his mother looked worried and continued to scroll through her phone. At home, a lengthy conversation ensued, lasting approximately an hour and a half. Afterwards, Tanya texted her own mother saying that Tristan didn't seem upset about having his phone and car keys taken away until his grades and behaviour improved, and that she would soon come to pick up the younger child who had been with Robin while Jeffrey and Tanya had gone to try to resolve things with Tristan. And this message was sent to Robin at around 4 p.m. Now, according to Tristan, so believe it or don't believe it, his mother discussed with him the importance of excelling in school, being respectful in relationships, avoiding risky or harmful behaviour, and not exploring religious teachings outside of Christianity, each to their own. They even made a list of personal qualities he needed to work on to become a better person. At some point, according to Tristan's version of the event, the conversation escalated. He claimed he reacted instinctively to a sudden movement, panicked, and the situation became out of control. He later stated that he believed he was defending himself and ran to his father in a state of shock. Later investigations and court proceedings showed that many details of his account were not supported by evidence. Neighbours later reported that they heard loud screams on the Borlase property at around 5:30 p.m. that Wednesday. The autopsy report on Jeffrey Borlase documented multiple stab wounds to the left side of the chest, to the back, cuts on the hands and wrists, as well as abrasions on the skull and forehead. The autopsy report on Tanya Borlase indicated that she sustained multiple stab wounds, including to the left side of the chest, to the back, to the arms, as well as injuries that could have been caused by compression of her neck. The results showed that both parents were defending themselves, not attacking. Furthermore, Tristan had the opportunity to get away from his mother if he had felt threatened. And even if the mother had fallen victim to a sudden loss of control or a misperception of self-defense, the killing of his father and the subsequent actions already appeared very different. Self-defense implies an immediate and present threat. So even if Tristan irrationally perceived a threat, then that would have and should have ended with his mother. When all was said and done, Tristan went back into the house, pulled his mother's body out, placed it in a truck, and hid it under a tarp. Then he spent about an hour cleaning the crime scene, and even used a hose to wash the porch outside the house. Clearly must have done a piss-poor job, given the amount of blood the police found later. Around 8:30 p.m, Tristan drove to his grandmother's house to pick up his younger brother. Now, Robin found this initially a bit strange, but Tristan explained that his parents urgently needed to go to the store and apologized that they didn't have time to come pick his brother up. About 20 minutes later, Robin received a call from another grandson who complained that his parents were not answering the phone and had not come to pick him up from his part-time job as usual. The grandmother called Alexis and asked her to pick up her brother. And then they agreed to meet at Jeffrey and Tanya's house to find out what the deuce was going on. And when they arrived, that's when Robin noticed blood on the porch. But since the couple had animals, she was not particularly alarmed at this stage. She went inside the house to get a torch to check on the animals, thinking that one of them was injured. And in the house she saw that there was blood everywhere. At that moment, Alexis ran into the house and reported that she had found some kind of body under the hammock near the animal shed. And she believed she had seen Tristan with blood on his face inside a vehicle. Alexis duly called emergency services, and the dispatcher told her and all family members to lock themselves in the car and wait for the police. The police arrived within 10 minutes. After several hours of waiting outside and speaking with officers, they were all taken to the station and informed that Jeffrey and Tanya Borlase had been found dead. While examining the crime scene, detectives found a computer interface in the house that connected the video surveillance system located inside the home to monitors to watch in real time. Detectives saw on the monitor a screen displaying a grid of various cameras transmitting live footage. And seeing this as a potential investigative goldmine, they immediately requested a warrant to obtain the login credentials from the company that serviced the system. In the meantime, Tristan contacted his girlfriend Evelyn and went to her house. She noticed that he seemed worried about something, and that he had several scratches on his forehead and hands. However, Tristan assured her that he had simply argued with his parents and had gotten the scratches while playing with the dog. Evelyn described Tristan's injuries as 3 scratches on his forehead, a wound on his hand, a cut on his finger, and a bruised fingernail. Right after the crime, Tristan posted a photo of the injuries on Snapchat, claiming that his father's dog had injured him. 21st century trail covering there, folks. According to his girlfriend, the photo matched the injuries that she saw on him that evening. And Tristan stayed with Evelyn for the night. The next morning they went to Walmart and McDonald's and were planning to go to school, but then changed their minds. Evelyn was convinced that Tristan simply wanted to get away from his parents for a while. So she suggested that he stay with one of her relatives. He agreed, and they left for another state. On April the 11th, employees from the sheriff's office received the username and password for the Borlase home surveillance system. They reviewed the camera recordings and learned the circumstances of the crime. The police obtained a warrant for Tristan's arrest and submitted information about the vehicle he had allegedly taken to the National Crime Information Centre. A search for the car began, followed by a pursuit. Investigator Matthew received information that Tristan had been seen in Tennessee and began preparing the necessary paperwork for the extradition of the suspected offender. He asked Robin, Tristan's grandmother, to accompany him during the arrest so that he could speak with the young man in her presence, who, at the age of 17, was technically a minor. While driving in the car with Evelyn, Tristan noticed blue lights behind them. He sped up and told his girlfriend that his parents must have reported the car stolen so that they could find him. He continued speeding down the highway in an attempt to get away, but eventually gave in to the pursuers and stopped.
A man found dead in the yard, and a teenager now arrested for the killings. Hello, I'm Alex Giles.
And I'm Molly Grantham. The killings happened at a home on Orchard Road in Deep Gap. We've mapped it for you. That's in Watauga County. WBTV's David Wisnett is live near where this happened, and he has new information. David?
Molly, the latest that we have been able to confirm is that this couple had 8 children. Some of them were foster children. They did not all live in that home on Orchard Road, but the 17-year-old who was taken into custody in Tennessee did live there.
It's sad.
Watauga County Sheriff Lynn Hageman says it was an awful scene.
Anytime you have domestic situations, they can obviously get out of control, and maybe that's what happened.
Deputies had said they were responding to a suspicious incident just after 10:30 last night. When deputies arrived at the home off Orchard Road, they found a woman dead inside a pickup truck in the driveway, her husband dead in the yard.
The biggest thing I think that we need to get across is, the public was never in really danger. It was just one of these situations that arises. Very unfortunate. We're sorry it happened.
The home sits back off the road. We could see deputies and the SBI working in the yard and around the house. The couple lived here with a number of children, including some foster children. The 17-year-old who was taken into custody in Tennessee overnight also lived in the home. Details of exactly what happened here and any potential motive have not been released.
It's very fluid in terms of, trying to make sure that all the bases are covered. And, we're just trying to be very careful in that respect, as we are in any kind of investigation along these lines.
And as the sheriff said, a very sad case. And again, I kind of want to show you where I am. This is Highway 421, about a mile from the Wilkes and Watauga County line. If you go right past that sign behind me, you'll see Orchard Road that's up there to the right. That's where this house is located. Reporting live in Watauga County, David Wisnett, WBTV.
Details released about what happened at this home in Deep Gap, but warrants for multiple cell phones and surveillance cameras describe what deputies saw when they walked into the home. Warrants show deputies found blood throughout the entire house, and it appeared someone had taken a shower. After investigating blood trails, they discovered Jeffrey Borlase dead underneath the hammock, covered in leaves. Deputies later located a truck belonging to the family, which was reported stolen, hidden in the woods. In the bed of the truck was Tanya Borlase, covered in a blanket and bags of mulch. Since the home was covered in surveillance cameras, deputies have requested that video, which could prove the couple was killed in the house and the bodies removed. Now, aside from those surveillance cameras, there is one warrant in particular in this large stack that stands out, and that's for the suspect's Snapchat. According to the warrant, the suspect posted pictures of his injuries on Snapchat, saying they were from a dog bite. Family members did not want to go on camera, but said Tristan was only one of 8 children in the family, 4 of which were adopted. They say the couple would help anyone. Tanya even sold her wedding bands to use the money to build houses in Haiti.
It's not fair. It's always the worst things that happen to the best people.
Blowing Rock Parks and Recreation Assistant Director Autumn Goheen says 2 of those children worked with her. She decided to help.
A lot of kids to try to figure out these very adult issues at such a young age.
And reached out to the community, asking for donations in the form of gift cards.
They're going to need to figure out how to pay these bills that were left, how to take care of one another. There's school expenses. They're going to have to figure out where their gas is going to come from, how to pay for their vehicles. They're going to be left with tuition.
And much, much more. She says since her call, the community has come together.
People who didn't know the family, local businesses really stepping up and doing anything that they can to make sure that they're going to make it and they'll be okay.
Rose Eckler, Spectrum News.
The Ford was surrounded by police vehicles. Evelyn, understandably, was completely confused when she saw her boyfriend handcuffed and taken away in a patrol car. Officers noticed that Tristan did not appear upset or distressed in any way. His April the 11th, 2019 interview, conducted by investigator Matthew, was recorded on video and audio. The young man answered all of the questions, confessed to the crime, and provided a detailed description of his actions. Occasionally he did cry, and Tristan was taken into custody without bail. My guess is the tears were for himself. Shortly afterward, the sheriff's office obtained a warrant to investigate Tristan's Snapchat account, and in total 5 of his accounts that could contain information related to the crime. A search warrant was also issued for the house on Orchard Road, where detectives discovered another phone found in the master bedroom, a keyboard and pen from a safe, paper cups, a hammer, a drinking straw, knives, glasses, a kitchen towel, a hammock, a digital video recorder, a mat, various papers, maps of South Dakota, and boots. And if you're a fan of Generation Game, a cuddly toy as well. According to court documents, a search warrant was also issued for the Ford F-150 truck, and a laptop charger and steering wheel cover were seized. A warrant was also issued for the search of Tristan's girlfriend's house in Boone, because the young man had stayed there overnight. The court documents state that a pillowcase, a zip-up hoodie, and a notebook were taken as evidence. The results of the investigations and searches helped investigators reconstruct the chronology of events down to the very minute. The self-defense version was deemed unfounded. The couple's funeral took place on April the 17th, 2019 at the Bible Fellowship Church, and the ceremony was conducted by pastors William Krantz and Brad Gray. The children, who had lost their parents at such a young age, managed to find the strength to write an obituary, and I quote, "Our parents never had the opportunity to live for themselves because they always lived for us. Jeff and Tanya were always an incredible joy to their children and a source of great pride. Our parents made the world a better place, and we hope to continue this legacy by loving people passionately and following Jesus. After the funeral, Taylor visited her once cherished brother in jail for the first time and was unpleasantly shocked. Tristan not only showed no remorse, but also tried to blame the family for what had happened. Taylor felt that he was convinced he would eventually regain his freedom. Taylor felt disgusted, turned around and left. Her second visit was on May the 11th, on the occasion of Tristan's birthday. This time she came with their grandmother, Robin. But the meeting was not very different from the previous one. This was definitely not the loving little boy she had once been so close to. Instead, her brother praised the party that had been thrown for him in jail for his birthday. After this visit, the family decided to cease all contact with Tristan because he was clearly a wrong-un. The trial began on February the 16th, 2022. In court, Tristan expressed regret over what had happened. He agreed with everything his family had said about him and supported the decision for a permanent no-contact order so that the family could feel safe. On March the 3rd, Tanya Borlase was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for each first-degree murder charge. Judge Horn noted that Tristan's mental health was a mitigating factor of sorts, as the psychologist's report stated that Tanya Borlase continued to suffer from anxiety and depression and had developed symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder. However, Judge Horn stated that the psychologist found no evidence of psychotic disorders. Although anxiety and depression could indeed have been aggravated by the ongoing use of illegal drugs. The most unusual fact in this story, perhaps, is that neither Tristan's family, nor his lawyer, nor Tristan himself made any statements regarding the motives behind the crime. During the trial, it was revealed that he experienced panic attacks, which in his youth his mother would help him cope with because she herself was prone to them. A child who possibly inherited a hyper-reactive nervous system grew up within rigid boundaries, feeling that he was not a good enough pious person. Some people naturally require more love, while others need less. And according to his older sister's memories, the little boy was deeply jealous of his new siblings, whose arrival shifted his parents' attention. First came rebellion, then a subdued mood, and a sense of worthlessness, followed by illegal weed panic attacks, and a lingering resentment. The North Carolina Court of Appeals ruled in early January of 2024 that a man, in our case Tristan, can spend the rest of his life in prison for killing his parents when he was 17 years old. And this opinion was handed down by two Republicans over the dissent of a Democratic colleague, who claimed that the decision diminishes the long-standing concerns surrounding the sentencing of juveniles. This majority opinion, written by recently installed Chief Judge Chris Dillon, a Republican, and joined by Judge Fred Gore, also a Republican, well, between them, they held that the trial court made no error in sentencing Tristan to spend life in prison without the possibility of parole, as the sentencing judge determined after a hearing that Tristan was not likely to be rehabilitated over the course of his imprisonment, finding that the slayings demonstrate a condition of irreparable corruption and permanent incorrigibility. But the dissent, authored by Judge John Arrowwood, as I said, a Democrat, points to studies showing that young people's brains are not fully developed until later in life. Arrowwood wrote that the trial court violated Tristan's constitutional rights by failing to appropriately consider his age, maturity, and the circumstances of his life. But despite this dissent, the fact remains that Tristan's sentence was reinforced by the majority judgment. And that was the case of the Borlase family. Even though we may never know precisely why this situation boiled over into a man brutally murdering both of his parents, the fact remains that a peaceable and loving couple were lost at the hands of someone that they loved and trusted implicitly. I would say it was senseless, but it likely made a degree of sense to Tristan at the time. And his seeming indifference since the murders suggests a degree of sociopathy or psychopathy. But regardless of Tristan and his underlying pathology, the remaining Borlase children have to cope with the loss of their beloved parents, with this loss being compounded by the fact that the cause of the loss was their own sibling. This episode is dedicated to Jeffrey and Tanya, and I send love to the Borlase family, with one notable and rather obvious exception: Cockwomble. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. I truly appreciate you watching the whole episode, as it makes me a very happy panda. Please like, share, subscribe, blah 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 blah. But with that said, I'm Steve. This fluff bucket is Samson, who is quite clearly a mercenary bastard. But he's cute when he wants to be. And we will see you when we see you.